Hello to the GMS Magazine podcast. I am Paco Garcia, one of your hosts, and this is a podcast all about board games, role-playing games, and the people who make them. Sometimes, indeed, the people who play them.
And obviously the people who make them for as long as they can.
Yeah, and you are.
This is Chris from DSX Machina and Tavern Snaps, and it seems like one of those companies is starting to dwindle while one of those companies soars. And give you two guesses which one's which.
Oh my God, so hard to guess. Let me think about this logically. One of them has something to do with China, and the other one doesn't. But that is not the reason why it's going down. It is because your market is right now in a big country ruled by an absolutely ridiculous senile Cheeto.
Yes, but that's the reason why I am in such a good mood right now.
Well, you're in a good mood because you've got some, just for the record, human beings, Chris is a proud son of Canada.
Yes. I actually worked, the reason we recorded this on Monday, we're recording this on a Tuesday because I was actually working elections. I worked 15 hours in front of a ballot box. We still use an analog system. We don't do digital voting. We still do everything by hand.
We do too.
There's a lot of advantages to it, and there's a lot of redundancy. I got there at 6 o'clock. I didn't really know what I was doing. I got some training the day before, but I got into a real rhythm. 7 o'clock, polls opened. We were getting people. I would say I was responsible for an area. So people just can't come to me willy-nilly. I am responsible for 550 people specifically. And so my voting, my success is dependent on whether or not these people show up. And thankfully, a few showed up. A few people I knew, most people I didn't. And then there's a whole process of confirming, getting the vote, putting the ballot, and then we open the box. We have witnesses. We do the whole balloting. I submit the information. It gets duplicated. But I live in BC, which means by the time I was counting, at the end of the day, they had already called the election's victory. And we're like, well, okay, we're going to keep on going just in case, see what happens. I'm also in a very staunch conservative. I'm BC. It's a very interesting place. 90% of the population exists in a small segment near the American border, Vancouver and Victoria. And then the remaining 10% is scattered across an area 4 times the size of Spain. And I always make the joke with Nicole when we were going on trips. She's like, oh, let's go. Like if we visit Spain, let's go to Germany. And I'm like, oh, honey, we have to drive through country. That's too far away. And then I realized I literally drove from Barcelona to probably the Ukraine over the weekend because I went from Prince George to Calgary, which is an 8.5 hour drive. And for me, that the issue, of course, is that the city folk are quite liberal and quite on the left. And so all the other cities, like literally all the other cities, all the small cities, any place with a population of 150,000 or less are pretty staunchly conservative because there's a lot of rednecks, a lot of farmers, and there's a lot of that. So there's a lot we have to field. About 30% still voted liberal or further left. But it was a very fascinating experience. I'm obviously in a very good mood. A quick other aside, the way we work is that you elect a someone to represent your riding. A riding is basically your area. That person then votes. It's almost like the electoral college, except that electoral actually has political power because they basically sit in parliament, more or less. And what we have a situation here is the fact that if you occupy more than half of those seats, you have what is called a majority government, which means you can vote anything through and no one can object to you.
Okay.
If you're a majority, but you don't have more than 50%, you have what is called a minority government, which means you actually, if in order to get any legislature through, knowing perfectly well that the conservatives, or whoever's on the opposite side of the spectrum, is going to go against you, you need support from other political parties. Now, this election was so two-sided. It was either liberal or conservative. The other parties kind of got gutted. So we have the Green Party, which is left, and NDP, which is left. And then we have the People's Party, which is further right than the Conservative. They got annihilated, thankfully. They got, I think the actual results were, they got 0.7% of the vote. So, but as a result, they don't even have any seats. So the PPC doesn't have any seats at all. The Green Party has one, and the NDP, which used to be my party, but they've kind of detonated, unfortunately, this year because of the bad choices. They occupy 5. Now, those 6 are enough to push the Liberals to a majority, which means they have to work with the far left in order to push their policies through. So this is, in some ways, the best case scenario, because they will have to concede to more leftist political ideas. And then the even better news is that the person who ran the NDP into the ground, unfortunately, has departed. And I'm really hoping this somebody else moves into power. I have the high hopes of this Aboriginal guy named Wap Canoe, who I adore.
I think you've mentioned them before. I
really, really love Wap, and I really hope he gets. I know he has to basically leave Manitoba, and Manitoba doesn't want to let him go because Manitoba is booming right now. And the other thing I love is that Pierre Poilievre, the right-wing Trump-loving politician that was running the Conservative Party, not only lost the vote to get him prime minister, he also lost his own riding.
Okay.
Which means this is the first time, or one of the few times, where a person running a political party doesn't actually have his own seat.
Wow.
So it is assumed that he is also going to step down. And if he doesn't, that Conservative Party is basically going to eat itself as it tries to, as there's infighting. If he does step down, I'm hoping that they push away from the Reform Party ideals and try to get back to center right, which is where they used to be up until about 10, 15 years ago. So I am in a very, very good mood today. Of course, I just said, thank fuck, and went to bed. I woke up to 4 people unfriending me.
Oh.
And I knew that was going to happen. The thing is, I knew that if the Conservatives won, I would get hit with a lot of people gloating. And since they can't gloat, they're just blocking and walking away. So like I said, I made a couple of posts where I've said the fact that, this is what we can do. This is the future. And then I made a picture, which is a digital image of Mark Carney, our new prime minister, giving Donald Trump the finger. So that has been the message, and I'm hoping it stays that way. But like I said, it's been a very interesting. Like I said, it's the good news against this horrible economic downturn that we have been dealing with.
And it's likely to continue. And listeners, viewers, if you're wondering why we're talking about these things, is because this is deeply affecting an awful lot of companies. Some people that we actually know personally. I know some people personally. So it is important to realize how the world is reacting to all this stupidity that's coming out from the United States at the moment. And by the way, if you're listening, viewing this thing, and you don't think it's a stupidity, the absolutest, most stupidity in the world, what's coming out of the United States, please stop watching now, unfriend me, stop following us, whatever you have to do, just don't bother us, okay? Because seriously, we don't want to deal with this kind of bullshit. So because of that, it's important to see what reaction other countries are having, because game companies and gamers are likely to be safer in other places than the United States. And new markets may have to open now that the United States, which is perhaps the biggest market in the world for gaming, both role-playing games and board games, is actually basically fucking itself. Last week, and I wasn't really paying that much attention to everything that was going on, but I saw at least 5 announcements from companies either folding completely, reducing their staff immensely, or stopping production of any new games for the foreseeable future until this situation is resolved. And one in particular, our beloved friend and now hero, soon to be turned into a god, Jamie Stegmaier, who's got the sacred balls of actually suing the American government for all the bullshit that's going on at the moment. that heavenly being, because I really don't have any more good words to describe him, is doing quite literally the God of Meeple's work. And that is
he's doing
incredible.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, we're going to be talking about politics a fair amount, a little bit in
for change.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, we're going to be talking more about politics because this time it's got nothing to do with social issues. It is to do with the livelihoods of literally thousands upon thousands of people. I saw somebody being laid out from Japanime game. Now, I know Eric Price personally. It's a guy that I respect and admire an awful lot, and I have a great deal of affection for the guy because he is an absolute gem. And I don't even want to imagine what must have gone through the mind of Eric to get to the point of having to lay people off. And I cannot imagine how many nights of trying to figure out how not to do it he must have spent. Because I can assure you, there is no way in hell that Eric would fire somebody unless it was absolutely necessary for the survival of the company and the future of the people who still work in there. So for me to see that is seriously very, very painful.
It's a very tough thing. So on a more direct, we know, to recap, that James Tegmeyer has filed a class action lawsuit. So I imagine he's not the only person. It's probably going to occupy many companies. He's definitely one of the big ones. And I think that there's going to be a lot more we're going to hear. A lot more companies are going to get named. It's going to include probably a long list. I wouldn't be surprised if he is kind of limiting it to American-based companies. We know that then the other big hit was CMON. CMON has announced, they're one of the big ones, obviously. They're big on Kickstarter. They said they are going to continue to commit to delivering the current Kickstarter projects, but they have stopped all future board game development.
Because they don't know how, and also they basically had to get rid of pretty much their whole creative team, because without development of new games, they obviously don't need the development of new illustrations, new maps, new boards, new character sheets, new writing, new anything. So this is a massive impact.
Yeah. And it's troubling because as someone that is in the physical field, physical publishing, I'm most fortunate and part of what's going to happen. We are going to see, I don't want to give out numbers, mind you, because it's completely arbitrary, a large number of game publishers that do physical print runs go under, stop publication, stop development. And the problem is that there is still this, I want to see, traditional need from a lot of gamers to own physical products. Even though DriveThruRPG and other digital platforms have gigantic sales, I have always made more money through digital sales than I ever do from physical. But physical somehow, in a lot of people's eyes, legitimizes you. You are not a real publisher unless you have a physical book in a game store. And there was this big push all through the 2000s and 2010s, the fact that you weren't anybody in the game industry until you had a physical book in stores. And I can see that point because whenever people say, this book has been really successful. One of the examples is that the fact that people talk about Everyday Heroes. They say Everyday Heroes is finally we have modern rules. And someone's just like, and I'm like, my product has sold, I have higher sales on DriveThruRPG, significantly higher sales. And I've been out longer. But it's that people, yes, but that's the product in bookstores. I was in a game store just a few months ago. No, not a few months ago, last month. And they kind of mentioned Ultra Modern, and none of the guys at that shelf knew it. And the guy looked it up on the computer, like, oh yeah, we can actually order this, but they had no idea it existed. And I said, like, it's really interesting because it's a Mithril badge seller. It's second from it's just below adamantine. You know, it's literally in the top 0.1% of sales on the platform, and yet people don't know about it because there's this belief. And now these companies that have kind of fostered this and pushed themselves into the physical space, they require so much overrun, and there's so much money that has to get sent to China for production, distribution, and then comes to America to distribute it further, that they're the ones that are getting hit. And so not only did we have from 5th edition, the 5th edition culling, where a bunch of 5th edition publishers went under because of this anti-5th edition rhetoric that moved around the last 2 years. Then on top of that, the physical game publishers are now getting hit because of tariffs, and now they're going under. So now we're getting this 1-2 punch economically to the industry. And this is for both board games and role-playing games. Board games are worse because while role-playing games have a very successful, predominant digital presence, board games do not. Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator are novelties at best. They do not have the type of kind of loyalty and fan dedication. People want physical games in their hands, and so board game companies, there is no digital refuge to hide in. They are just completely screwed in every way, and so yeah, I think when it comes to the board game industry, I think they are in severe trouble. The only alternative that few of them have already talked about is to completely cut out the American market, print in China, ship to Germany or France, do distribution to Europe. And this is the reason why companies like the company that you were just talking about before we were recording, Free League, they can kind of get around it because, or the same thing with Awaken Realms, which does everything out of Poland. Everything printing comes to Poland. Then they run the Kickstarter out of Poland, or they run their campaign at GameFound. They run their distribution. And so their market base has been in Europe. The problem is that if you had been relying on the American market, you now have to pitch your product to a brand new base. And that was my issue, the fact that if I do a Kickstarter and then run Asia to Europe, I have to now sell my game to a brand new audience because my backers, 80% of my backers are in North America. I'd say 60 to 70% are American, about 10, 15% are Canadian. There is a small number in Europe, but because of shipping charges, it's always been very low. And now here I'm going hand in hand to approach a European market, going, now it's cheap for you guys. Is there a population of people willing to back these products in Europe?
It depends. Okay, the short answer is yes, because there have been plenty of American projects that have been incredibly successful also in Europe. However, I think there are two things that need to happen for that to become more of a reality for more companies. And one of them is that companies must become savvier with two things. One is marketing, because at the end of the day, marketing for the American our audience is one thing. Marketing for the European audience is a completely different thing altogether. Now, it is true that often we fall for the same marketing techniques because we see shiny and we go, ooh, shiny, I like this. So we're going to go for it. And we also rely on reputation. Like, for example, Simon, or Come On, as we call it here. We rely on reputation, and that's why they're always so successful. Whereas Awaken Realms, we rely on them because of their reputation on this bizarrely insane, detailed, beautiful looking games. But there is one thing, and this applies mostly to role-playing games because that's something else, and is that board game companies are a lot savvier than role-playing game companies. As you know, I work for and with Maple on Board Vanguard. And what we do is basically find new homes to games, both board games and role-playing games. And Michael Raftopoulos has been doing this for board games for a very, very long time now, and it's become incredibly successful. Board game companies are incredibly more open to doing things differently and betting for their games than role-playing game companies are. One of the things that we do is that it's very common when you license a game that in the past it was a 10% every 6 months on any sales on sale price. So if you sell a game for $50, then you would give us $5. But we do things differently, and we charge all the royalties in advance or split it in 2 or 3 payments. And that applies also to role-playing games. It's been absolutely no issue whatsoever to apply that to board games. None. And yet for role-playing games, which although it's true the profit is smaller, but the royalties are also smaller, people are incredibly reluctant to do it. I will give you a proper example. A game that I wanted to license to a Spanish fella to do the licensing for 1,000 copies would be 700 euros. That is not a lot. That really isn't a lot. They refuse to do it because they're used to paying 10% every 6 months. And we refuse to do that because, firstly, we have to go after them all the time to make sure that they pay. Secondly, maybe they're going to give us 50 euros every 6 months. An author doesn't buy food with those amounts of money over 3 years. But if you give somebody 700 euros in one go, that month is sorted. You're actually helping those people make a living. So board game companies are, as you know, savvier than role-playing game companies. And I think that that is one thing that really, truly needs to change, the way that people license their games. If you want to come into Europe, you must start looking for people who will license your game in different countries before your game is out. Because translation costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time, and usually, if you release something in 2025, by 2026, people will be looking at something else. Your game will no longer be popular and people won't be interested. So it will be a lot harder to market. So there are other difficulties to doing things in Europe, but the market is certainly there. We do.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where, yeah, you're right. Something like, especially a role-playing game specifically, which is a lot more difficult with board games, you can mitigate the amount of work required for translation by making a very symbolic based. So you would say, that was one thing we did with Naramata. I took out all the words, and so the only thing we needed to translate was the manual.
Okay.
With role-playing games, obviously that's impossible. The whole book has to get translated, which creates and I've had offers from people wanting to translate ultra-modern, and things have just never panned out. I had one Italian company offer me money for a license so they can publish Ultra-Modern 5 in Italian, but they never followed through. And I've always been open to the idea, but the one refuge that digital role-playing games have, the board games don't, is that we have a very much a digital refuge to hide from. And for me, I need to, so for my companies, I haven't posted this video yet. I'm probably going to re-record it just because of recent events. We were kind of committed, not through a Kickstarter, but through other means, to do one more print run. Thankfully, before all this blew over, while Biden was still president, my last 2 Kickstarters hit distribution and then got sent out. That distribution cost was way more expensive than I had previously planned. It was nearly double my budget. I have mentioned that, but I was still hoping on being able to do one more print run of Affinity before we moved on to another new original project. I ran a Kickstarter just last month that I was hoping would net. Now, it did not succeed, but within the last week, I realized that I didn't want to, because ultimately I knew that unless this campaign actually made 100,000, 200,000 in order to counteract the insane costs. I was going to lose $20,000, $30,000 off the whole thing. And that's something I just couldn't afford to do. I couldn't do it. So now I have to go and say to people like, yes, I've said numerous times that we're going to do a second print run of Affinity. That's no longer going to happen, right? And considering that how short attention spans are, as you just mentioned, and other projects, that window is now closed for future development of that project, which means there will not be. I still want to write the novels because the novels, I don't have to print those in China. Those can print it off of Amazon, print on demand from anywhere. And I get a lot more personal joy in writing a novel than I do writing a role-playing game. Always been. So for me, I'm kind of following a bit of advice you said and said, like, my next 2 Kickstarters will probably be novels, which will be print on demand, digital download only. And as a result, because there's no real art budget, the campaign goal is going to be like $100, $200. Like it's not, because it's just there to get people the interest and so forth. And so the question is, do I do an Affinity novel or do another Avidus novel? And I may put that to the crowd. At the same time, though, I'm taking a bunch of digital books on to DriveThruRPG. I'm going to be developing Armory. My monster manual is about 95, 98% done. And I have those products to put out. I may even do a color update of Apex or Neurospasta. Neurospasta is a black and white cyberpunk novel. Oh, boy. I got a little annoyed. There has been this is something else we'll have to talk about, but I'll get to that later. So that's been my approach. So now I have to tell people that, like, I have 40 pre-orders of Affinity that I have to now tell these people, like, this project is not going to happen. Because by the time all of this settles, by the time I have the confidence that there's a reliably inexpensive distribution network in America, that's too far ahead to consider returning to this franchise as a role-playing property, right? I would much rather take that money that's been earmarked to get it back from China and then send it off to other things that are more advisable. Like right now, for me, that's the cracker business, which is exploding because Canada is being ultra patriotic and literally taking American crackers off their shelves. And so I've been visiting stores with my fantasy-themed gluten-free crackers, and someone's like, "Oh, great! That's great timing. We have an empty shelf of American gluten-free crackers that we don't have room for." So, like this last week, a company came over, like, "Oh, great! I'll take 5 boxes, please." I had one company reach out and go, "We would like 15 to 20 boxes per flavor." And I'm like, "How many do you have?" I said, "I have 3 right now per flavor," because so we are in the kitchen twice a week, probably forever at least. I have 300 bags behind me that aren't even bagged. They're just buckets of crackers. I have to then bag them all up. So that, as we alluded to at the beginning, that's the business that is blowing up right now as I divert into, oddly enough, from one physical product to another physical product. But one where I'm doing most of the work. Now, the irony, of course, is that I get my bags from China. I get my tapioca flour from Thailand. It's going to be moving to Nigeria. Mostly everything, flaxseed, sunflower seeds, all the spices come from Canada. I am made in Canada. I'm not a product in Canada, but it's enough because I live in Canada that I can say made in Canada. And that I'm promoting that and getting a lot of business. It's unfortunate that that's going to be the path for a lot of role-playing game companies. We're going to see them stepping back. But the smart play at this point is to lean on digital products and promote more. We just got out of COVID where millions of people realized that they could play digitally online with digital tools. They don't need physical books. But there's this still demand that you are not legit. Same thing with Hollywood. You're not legit unless you're a movie actor. Bullshit. You could be a successful person in television or what the case may be. And so that's the direction. And so I'm pushing more back to digital products. I will be pushing digital products for the next probably couple of years.
I think something else that especially RPG companies are going to have to get better at, which I think would be a lifeline for a lot of them, is logistics. One thing that a lot of people have told me in the past is that they didn't want to do two different prints of the same game, one in the United States and one in Europe, because they feared that the differences in printing were going to be too visible, that people would get really upset, that the quality wasn't going to be the same. Let's forget about the fact that that is completely insulting to people, to companies that work and operate and have been doing so in Europe for generations and actually producing fucking great books. Thank you very much. We've been reading for a very long time very, very good books from very, very good printers, not from the United States. Thank you. So let's forget about that bit of xenophobia bit in there. But dudes, even if the quality were different, I don't think there is going to be a single European who's going to go to the United States, get a book, come back to Europe, get the same book printed in Europe, and then say, oh, this is absolutely appalling. How dare they giving us such a poor quality and different? Do they keep the best quality to themselves? That's just not gonna freaking happen. So stop fearing that and take a look at the absolutely incredible books that are being printed right now in Poland, even though Poland is not my favorite country because, oh my fucking God, those homophobic, shitty politicians they have could all die in a fire, but they could go to Lithuania, which is not a lot better, but it's a lot better than Poland, and have some absolutely amazing books printed there. So quit the patriotic American bullshit, especially when you're printing in China, thank you very much, and think about logistics of printing here so you will avoid a ginormous amount of taxes. If you print in Poland, VAT is not too much of a problem because you can send from Poland anywhere else in Europe and not having to form customs, to notify to sign custom forms for every shipping shit. Yes, setting up is complex. Yes, there are companies that can help you with that. But once you're done, marketing and selling in Europe is a piece of cake. So get over yourself. Otherwise, you're going to die.
Well, like I said, for me, it's as someone like who's been used to doing, like, once again, for larger companies, I think that is absolutely an option. For one-man, two-man operations, I think, like, for someone like me who has to rely on a lot of third party, it's tricky. Like, for me, someone's just like, well, like, license your products to game companies in Europe. I go, great. I wish there was a list. I wish there was an email list to say, look, here's my product. Let me know if you want to publish it in your language. You can translate it and so forth. And it's one of those situations where I would love to basically hand Ultramodern off to European publishers and have them translate it and spread the love. I mean, I have an SRD for Ultramodern, for God's sakes. I think I would love to do that. I would love to do it. If there was any publishers in Europe for any language that say we want to do a translation of this product, I'm like, let's make it easy. Let's make it happen.
Well, I think there will be a few of them. I can think of a couple of them in Europe that might, but you have two things against you. One is the time that Ultramodern has been published, which means there's not a really new kind of, oh, look at this exciting new shit thing, which people go on after. And secondly, it's a huge book, which I haven't seen because you've never sent me one, but that's fine. No hard feelings. That's okay. Whatever.
I'm not a rich man.
I know. That's why I've never insisted. And I know, believe me, I know how expensive it is sending books to the United States and Canada. So that's fine. And secondly, because they're big, big books and translation is highly expensive, as in ginormously expensive. So how many words would Ultramodern have in its core rule book? 200,000?
Yeah, I think it's like 220. I think I remember it was between 180 and 250,000 words.
Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about roughly between 9 and 10,000 euros just the translation.
Yeah.
So that is a huge amount of money. But anyway, we'll see what we can do. I'm sure that I can muster some publishers out there and try to get some interest.
Yeah. And like I said, you say, yeah, the product isn't new, but the one advantage is like, well, it's not new, but it also has an established base. So
That's
there's like,
true.
it's been around.
And how many supplements and adventures have you published? Because that's also very important.
Well, once again, in English, Ultramodern has 5, because you have the 3 affinity books, you have Apex, Neurospasta, you have the 5 adventures that we put out just last year with 2 more coming out plus Threshold. So,
okay, well, I can work on that. Fine. Okay, I think we should jump on to the next topic that I want to talk about, because we've been talking about this for 35 minutes, and entertaining as we are, there is something else that I would like to discuss. So, shall we go for it? Okay. What?
Nothing. I know that sound effect in a lot of podcasts.
Well, okay. There's something I want to talk about. And I want to warn, I haven't told Chris what I want to talk about. This is going to be completely new to everyone ever, although it's not going to be a surprise. But I would like for us to make of this segment a journey into the imagination of the future. What do I mean with this? Over the last few weeks, 2 of the heavyweights in the world of Dungeons and Dragons have left the building.
Oh.
Yeah. Mr. Chris Perkins and Mr. Crawdford both have left Hasbro Wizards of the Coast. Surprisingly, absolutely zero controversy or scandal around it.
Yeah, it just kind of came out in the ether.
It was kind of out of, for the public, that is us, out of nowhere. I mean, I really thought that Jeremy Crawford was going to retire, not leave Wizards of the Coast. He was going to retire out of it, because he has been, and some people are going to hate me for saying this, more influential, a better developer, and more important to Dungeons and Dragons than anyone ever since Gary Gygax and Arnie Davison or whoever. More important, seriously. He has been, and I know that people like, there have been some absolutely incredible figures for D&D, like James Lowther, who I absolutely adore. I think he's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being. But Jeremy Crawford's been the architect, the mastermind behind the most successful D&D edition ever. He breathes Dungeons and Dragons. His talent is completely and utterly unquestionable, unlike all the people before him. And to see him leave makes me wonder what's going to come next. And this is where I would like for us to go into elucubrating the wildest predictions that could come out because Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins have left Wizards of the Coast. Firstly, Chris, why do you think they have done what they've done and left?
When I heard about it, I didn't research. I've been hearing a lot of people's hot takes, and the people who know are very much not sharing. At least the people I know have not been sharing. So if you'd ask me why I think this happened, it's hard for me to say. I maybe they feel, well, I wouldn't be surprised if a new game company emerged or got announced in the next week, because that's how 13th Age came out. 13th Age came out specifically because Rob Heinzu and ex 4th edition creators basically left the ship and formed their own company and made their mechanically related, but very unique and very pleasant 13th Age system. You're excited.
I am, because I know what must have happened soon after they decided, they announced that they were leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I can see somebody like Jeff Richards. He's the creative director of Chaosium, and as well as being a very good friend of mine and somebody that I love with all my heart. He's incredibly talented, very, very, very shrewd, and very quick. And I can imagine him doing this and saying, "Hey, Perks, how about coming to Chaosium? Oh, wait a second. I have Crawdford on the other line. Give me a minute. Hey, Crawdford. Sorry, dude. I'm being sandwiched between you and Perks. Would you like to come to Chaosium and work on Glorantha? Great. Let's talk next week." And I bet you anything that he would do that, because
you think they got poached?
I think that Jeff would be like, "Come to Glorantha, baby."
It is entirely possible that has happened. Yes. I mean, I think we're going to find an answer pretty soon, but I think that's one of the reasons why there's been so little time.
No. We're going to find an answer. Of course we are. Eventually, we're going to find out. I mean, it's pretty clear that neither of them is ever going to leave the world of role-playing games, and that they will be hunted down by people who want to work with them. But this segment is all about coming up with ridiculous nonsense as what could and we think may happen in the future. So, okay. What else do you think could happen in the future of these two great Dungeons and Dragons men? Because I have loads of ideas.
I am actually more interested in hearing what you think, because obviously you have ideas.
I also think, that it could easily, very probably be that certain Dungeons and Dragons or former Dungeons and Dragons streamers have gone to both of them and said, "Hey, how about Tal'Dorei?" And they may be writing more games for Critical Role, because that would be very, very interesting indeed.
Well, I know they're going to land on their feet, but I guess the question is, did they leave and then get poached, or did they leave and then get hired, or did they get poached and did they leave because they had another job opportunity?
I think it's going to be a mix of both. I reckon that they have left Wizards of the Coast because they were probably absolutely tired of having to fight tooth and nail for every single bit of progressive change that they have managed to claw into the game itself. Something else is that I wouldn't be surprised, especially in the case of Crawdford, that VEI being stripped off so many companies, maybe this is something that they were thinking about doing also in Wizards of the Coast. And I don't think Jeremy Crawford would be that compromising if something like bigotry came to the company to a higher level or degree. So that could also be a possibility why they've left. I reckon that Perkins probably left because of disagreement with management as to how D&D was being promoted, because he's been very, the community manager for Wizards of the Coast D&D for a very, very long time, and he's been very proactive and very active. So I reckon that they just got sick and fed up of the company for whatever reason, and that's why they have decided to leave the firm. That's my theory. So they've left in good terms, in theory, as in, no big arguments, nothing to make public, no statements. I reckon that they've had to tell F off to a number of people, and they have left probably after an awful lot of arguments and a few words said louder than others. That's my take. So I don't think they would want to go back to Wizards of the Coast unless management changed considerably. That would be my take. If ever, I don't think Perkins will go back ever. He doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy who makes half decisions. Once he said, this is it, it's gone. But who knows? I don't really know the man, so I'm not entirely sure. So those are the reasons why I think they have gone. Now, what do you think they have gone? Aside from what I said, you have to invent something new. Come on, you're a role player. You have imagination. You can do this.
I've been. All I know is the fact that, from my perspective, looking at all the evidence I've seen, that the SRD, which is something else I wanted to talk about, which is actually pretty shockingly good news, that the release of the SRD seems to be an incredibly bold move. And it's weird that these two gentlemen would leave the company on the cusp of what is one of the more very, very brave things I've seen Wizards doing in a reputation of doing things that are more about protecting their own butts. So I personally think that they have. I don't think that they were fired. I think they left under their own accord, and I think they have access to some investment money to start their own company. And I don't think that they were poached. I actually think if two guys leave like that, I wouldn't be surprised if they formed their own company. Which is very, very, I would say, ballsy, especially in this time period to leave when they do. But obviously, they must know something that I'm not aware of.
Okay, so let's go with that, because I like that idea, and it's very compatible with mine. That they were really sick and fed up with this thing, and they decided to do something by themselves. Now let's imagine what kind of things would they be willing or wanting to do in the near or perhaps not so near future or whatever? What do you think they will want to do?
Oh, that's a very good question. What I think is probably going to happen, well, once again, I speak from experience of what happened recently when a lot of the creative team departed after 4th edition. They formed a variation of their own, what they liked most about 13th Age, and kept it together for 13th Age. So, grabbing what they loved about 4th edition, making 13th Age. I can see them pulling on what they know to create. And this is something I saw because there have been attempts after the SRD fiasco from 2 years ago. There was a rise of rival systems that were meant to keep the spirit of 5e alive. What the common complaint was from a lot of people is that none of them did anything new or interesting. Mm-hmm. This was something, I heard this a lot. So it was like, what's the difference between Black Flag and 5e? And the answer was virtually nothing. They are basically identical. And at that point, I think what people are looking for now is, despite the love or hate you have for 5e, there is a group of people that are open to something that's bold and new, but still thematically similar. Because when I was developing my 5.5 variation on my live streams, the push from the audience was go further, push harder. Frederick Wheeler from How to RPG was disappointed. Like, he saw, I turned out like my plans were way more divergent than what we saw these rival 5e systems were doing. And he thought I wasn't pushing it enough. And so I wouldn't be surprised if these guys said, like, we're capitulating to the traditional crowd too much. Mm-hmm. We're going to come out with a true 6.0, which could never survive as a D&D product because of the traditionalists. But if you schism that into its own brand, it suddenly becomes bold and creative. And I think about Unearthed Arcana, or Arcana Unearthed, the Monty Cook book that came out after the release of 3rd edition, mm-hmm. which was a rival player's handbook, which radically took directions that were different than what 3rd edition did. That's the only guess that I would make, that these guys would produce a radically different variation of 5th edition, as far as the 6th edition framework as we could hope for, in an attempt to create really interesting, bold ideas that they couldn't do because of the traditionalist voices within the 5e or D&D fandom that don't want things to change.
And I would go for that. And to be honest, I think that is more a prediction than it is ridiculous elucubration, which is what I was going for. I think, and this is a bit more seriously, because my, what I was going to say, I'm going to say later because of fun. But I think you're absolutely right. They probably want to do things differently. I bet you, well, pretty much anything you want to bet, that they wanted to do things that they were told no by the suits in the firm. And they are, hey, if we do this, this could be absolutely gigantic. So they would be, and to be honest, I think they are knowledgeable and talented enough to be able to pull it off. Whether they will get enough traction or a backlash because of the stupid diversity and inclusion, tendencies nowadays is a different thing. But I reckon that this is something that if they do, they should be able to be incredibly successful to do it. And if they had somebody, and this is just no joke, like Critical Role or Chaosium behind them, being able to help them create something amazing, they would do very, very, very well. And I say Critical Role more than Chaosium, because if they manage to get some agreement for CR to stream, to do, live games about, actual plays of whatever it is they create, that could be massive, really, really massive. But my stupid idea, what I reckon they're going to do, or they should do, and they definitely should do, is to create rip-offs done well of all the settings that they have already released or that they haven't released yet. So, for example, if I were them, I would create a gay version of Dragonlance, which instead of a drag on a lance, had what's called Fagonlance, which was more extreme than Dragonlance.
Oh God!
I can say that. I'm gay, so I can say that.
I am going to, like 20 years ago, I walk into an adult video store and I'm going to see that on a shelf. Oh God!
And that's an image that you will never be able to get out of your head.
I mean, I got to put on a hat so I can piff it. I don't have my hat near me. I have to. Anyway, so
sorry about that.
Wait
a second. I think I deserve this. I think I deserve this.
Oh yes, okay. I approve of the soundboard. Please do more of it. There is a new superhero 5e game going that's on Kickstarter, and this is coming back to what we're talking about now, whether or not are people who are still putting products on Kickstarter at this point playing Russian roulette, thinking that they're going to make things work.
Okay, according to my friend Dina, who is a specialist marketeer for Kickstarter, yes, there are people who still think that they can actually make that work. And nowadays it is incredibly difficult for something like that to actually work. Kickstarter just doesn't work like that anymore. Whereas before it was indeed a tool that could make or break. But we are talking at the time where making $30,000 was having a huge success. And now 30,000 is what you have to have in the bank to invest in your campaign if you really want to make it a great success. So yeah, some people still think that, but it could happen. Sometimes sometimes it does happen, but that's not how our Kickstarter works anymore.
Yeah. And for me, although I plan on returning to crowdfunding quite soon with new products, I won't be doing anything relating to physical print runs. But with this superhero game, it's been bothering me a lot. Beyond the fact that its promotional promotion has been heavy, so much that I know that they are not doing particularly well because I see their advertisements everywhere. Mm-hmm. And last time I checked, they'd only made about $60,000, which I know that they've probably sunk $10,000 into their advertising campaign. So good luck. But I know one way they are saving money, and that's because they're using AI. I was surprised that they are allowed to be on Kickstarter, because Kickstarter has tried to say that they don't want that stuff on there, but they have been quite honest and upfront with the fact that they are using Midjourney. They are saying that their conscience is clean, and this is something I'm going to fully admit that I was hiding behind this excuse when I was playing around with AI, when I still felt that there was the possibility of an ethical direction. I don't anymore. But when I thought that there was, I thought that you could create original artwork by using Midjourney as part of the equation. But it felt more and more that that was an excuse to still cut artists out of the equation by saying, we're going to take this Midjourney art and then we're going to hire somebody to polish it and remove all the artifacts and make it feel original, and therefore he can sign off on it. That was a mentality I will fully admit that for a short period of time I embraced.
For the record, so did I. At the very, very beginning, when I thought that things were different, I thought exactly the same as you did. And then I realized how things are being done and how things are being used. And this is why nowadays I don't use AI, and I condemn the use of AI, not because of the technology, but because of everything ethically wise and the amount of hurt and damage it's doing to an awful lot of people. So yeah, I'm with you. I understand where you come from.
So for me, I was surprised. No, that's the first thing I was surprised at. Second thing I was surprised at is that they still raised $50,000.
I'm not surprised about that as well.
That is still that they are reaching that success. Yeah. The third thing that was annoying is that they are claiming to be the first product to bring superpowers and superheroes to 5e. And that really rubs me the wrong way. I've been seeing this a lot where a high profile or semi-high profile or a big budget book comes to crowdfunding. Their advertising campaign tries to make the claim that they're the first, that they are groundbreaking new fields and how to push the envelope of 5th edition rules. I heard the same thing. Like some of the people who were talking about everyday heroes were making the claims that they were the first, that they were like, and I've been seeing people like sci-fi is finally coming to 5th edition with hyperlanes. No, it's not. 5e is finally coming to Cyberpunk with this company. No, it's not. And the funny thing is, I'm not even claiming that I am the first, but I just have, like, someone says, like, we're the first. Like, well, I came out in 2017 with Neurospasta. Somebody most certainly put out something that was Cyberpunk before. No, it was actually, sorry, it wasn't 20. It was 2016. Somebody, I'm sure, beat me to the punch at some point that you just don't know about it because they released it on Drive-Thru-RPG and DM's Guild and then vanished. I released Apex for 4th edition in 2014, and then I released it for 5th edition in 2016. I don't even think that I'm the first superhero 5e game, but at least I got you beat by almost 10 years. And so it always annoys me that so many of these companies feel that if they are just loud enough and they convince enough people that they can try to make a stance. I was tagged in one of my memories on Facebook of somebody that approached me that said that my artwork was derivative of artwork. I can't remember which book it was, but its artwork was derivative of Dark Souls, beyond the fact that it's no way similar to Dark Souls. And I said, well, that's impossible. My product came out 4 years before Dark Souls. And then he says, well, I hope they don't sue you. I'm like, that seems, once again, and I almost hope they do, because it would be a wonderful case of me getting a lot of free promotion because of their idiocy on suing a product that came out 4 years before them, right? I had the same thing. There was a game that bombed horribly, but its cover and the cover of Neurospasta were almost identical. So I actually posted going, hey, this is the cover for this game. Here's the cover of Neurospasta. My game came out a year before. Just making sure you all know I am not ripping off anybody. It's the same thing with when I was advertising Ultra Modern and I had the image of the Tiefling with all the guns around it. I was getting a lot of hate from the Outgun people. And Outgun had to go on onto their Discord page to say, stop attacking this product. Their artwork came out before ours. We are both ripping off the same original source. Neither of our images are we're not ripping. I'm not ripping him off. He's not ripping him off. We're both ripping off one product, which itself ripped off a product that's nearly a century years old. People's memories are so short. So I have these 3 big issues with this superhero game for 5e. A is that they are trying to run a physical Kickstarter. 2, they're using AI art unabashedly. And 3, they're claiming they're the first company.
Well, screw them. I don't know how well the campaign is going to pan out to be or anything. But yeah, I wouldn't be definitely taking a look at all. But what I'm going to take a look at right now is the clock, because we've been going for an hour now, and it is 22:42 where I actually exist at this moment. So it's time to say goodbye to our beloved listener and viewer, which probably is the same person.
So long, farewell, I did see adieu.
Please stop singing. Humans, thank you very much indeed for being in touch. And thank you very much indeed for being there, which is genuinely and truly appreciated. As always, you can get hold of me on the usual Twitter and what else? Blue Sky. I know there's music in the background. Hey, hey, you said you wanted the soundboard, so here is the soundboard. So anyway, get hold of us on Twitter, on Facebook, Blue Sky, where we are. Find us in TikTok, where we are also there, and we'd love to hear from you. And email us on podcast@gmsmagazine.com. Oh, you can say goodbye. Would you want some music? Would you do that?
No. I think all the music has been done. I mean, this is also fun. I mean, yes, this is Chris with Deus Ex Machina. Finding out Deus Ex Machina and Tavern Snaps. But now I feel like a post-credit sequence. Have you stayed for the credits?
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will stay for the credits. So anyway,
I'm driving with this.
Until the next time, we have to be singing until the music ends.